At Chipotle, we also have a playlist. Guacamole as it's being hand-mashed, the sizzle of adobo chicken on the grill, the chopping of onions and cilantro. We call our playlist Real. Order now. Chipotle, for real.
Achtung Millwall is the #1 Millwall podcast, and we're proud to support the wonderful Lions Food Hub. In fact, all of our advertising profits are donated to them. Why not visit the link in our X account if you're able to make a donation? Or, if you prefer, why not pick up an Achtung Millwall t-shirt from the excellent No One Likes Us clothing site, noonelikes.co.uk. At least £8 from every sale is donated to the Food Hub. Achtung Millwall, No One Likes Us clothing, and the Lions Food Hub, supporting families in the SE16 area.
You're listening to Achtung Millwall, broadcasting from the beautiful South Birmingham. Accept no substitute.
Hello dear listeners, welcome to a pre-season Achtung Millwall. My name is Nick Hart. You join me in the unusual surroundings of the AstroTurf pitch at the Lions Centre. Why, you're asking yourself? It is media day, same day as the open training day. I've got a galaxy of Millwall podcast stars circulating around me like the Andromeda Galaxy. They're all walking away from me now, but I do have Omar Ronayne pinned here with me. Omar, how you doing, mate?
I'm not too bad, Nick, mate. How you doing? You all right?
I'm good. This is an unusual event, isn't it?
Yeah, special. It's nice for the club to invite us in. Obviously, we're all very appreciative of that. But yeah, it's behind-the-scenes magic, as they say.
It's always kind of strange, dear listeners, to come to the club on an off day, is a non-match day. Very strange sense of normally busy places being completely empty. But this is a really nice idea by the club, trying to reach out to the various podcasts, Chat with Chaps, Dan Lions TV, and That Mill podcast. Omer's around getting his gear at the moment. That's the end of the pre-season, the dreaded pre-season. I'm hoping now that we are into the real meat. Obviously, everyone's going to go to Norwich City on Saturday after a pretty decent-looking pre-season. Dare we read anything into it? We obviously speak in the wake of the 3-0 win on Saturday, just gone. The news at Den says Millwall boss Alex Neil is encouraged by the attacking performance in the final pre-season friendly, a 3-0 win over Estoril prior. I must admit I had to look up where they are. They're actually halfway up the Portuguese First Division, so a fairly decent outfit. Some nice looking goals scored by Ivanovic and Coburn on Saturday. So a very promising pre-season. I think that, after 50 odd years, this will be my 53rd year of following the Lions, dear listeners. So you kind of get a little bit jaded and cynical, but this is the most optimistic I think that I have felt in many, many years. Should I trust that emotion? I don't know. But certainly it's been a decent pre-season, and we await Norwich City with anticipation on Saturday. So we'll be back very shortly, hopefully, with a couple of player interviews. The summertime of change, of course, dear listeners. The make-up of the squad saw a few of the old faces, George Saville, Murray Wallace, George Honeyman depart. And a real emphasis on youth is the theme of the club now. Obviously, the transfer window remains ajar until the end of the month, so we do wait with some trepidation as to what might become of our star assets, which is obviously now Mihailo Ivanovic, who looks increasingly on the ball up front. I thought some of the goals he scored in pre-season have looked really sharp. And obviously the position of Jeff Tanganga is another open question at the moment. So as much as the optimism is very real, and you feel it all around the internet, you have to be a little bit wary of going too far with it. But then this is Millwall. What are we, dear listeners, if we don't go too far with our optimism? Certainly not the Millwall that I've known for 50 odd years. I think probably what crosses my mind is the come down of the first defeat, because we will lose some, and the kind of buzz of the high will be met with the crash of the of the low when we get beat the first time. But anyway, we'll see. I am talking to Will Scott, the news at Den. Will, welcome to Achtung Millwall, mate.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
No, you're not delighted to be on here. I've sprung you with my microphone. The look of terror, frozen terror on your face. You're looking forward to the new season?
I can't wait. I've only covered Mill for about 10 months or so, but from what I've heard, from speaking to fans, players, people in and around the club. It's the most optimism I've had going into a season for a long time. It's hard to see why. Breaking a transfer record 3 times in the past year. Some of the players are signed. Arrivederci stands out to me as a real coup. Obviously, friendly signings are one thing, actual results are another one. So I think how they play away at Norwich, a good side. I remember Carrow Road last year at Boxing Day was a tough fixture for Millwall. I think that's going to be really... Yeah,
we haven't won there since 1968, can you believe it? I was 8 years old.
Wow, yeah.
Long while.
I think that's going to be really instructive, I think. How they play especially as well, whether they go for the 2 up front, whether they go for 1, how they fit all those sort of attacking pieces into the jigsaw. I'm very interested.
There's a lot of good signs in the side. I think some of the football we played at the end of last season, really, really attractive football, Will.
Yeah.
Hopefully we're going to see more of the same this season. I was just talking to Alex Neil there. He seems to be of the opinion if we play going forwards, as we can do, we're in with a shout. So it's got to be, it's got to be positive, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's interesting sort of hearing Alex talk about the evolution of what he wanted from Millwall. He's first and foremost quite pragmatic. He's always emphasised that. But when he first got here, I think he wanted to potentially try and improve the style of play a bit more, make it a bit more, retain a bit more possession, a bit more structured out of possession. And I think they have done that. I think they are very structured out of possession. But what I've noticed is they're going a bit more long. When they decide to play the 2 up front, there's a bit more directness to them. A bit more, look, we've got 2 big fellas. Yeah. They're going to brutalise. You mentioned after Sheffield United, he brutalised some. They have some fantastic centre-backs. Yeah. Josh Coburn brutalised some of them. We can sort of smash the door down instead of, slowly but surely breaking down the hinges. So it'll be interesting to see if he decides to evolve it further, sort of combine the 2 where you've got the 2 big men, but also a way of playing through. It's a bit harder with just 2 in midfield, so it'll be interesting to see how he does. But he's such and every player I've spoken to have spoken about all this sort of attention to details and the little things he notices and sort of helps refine their game. Yeah. So it'll be very interesting to see the next evolution in that.
100%. You're going to go to Norwich on Saturday?
Of course, I can't wait. I'm so excited to see actual football. It's 3 months.
Yeah, it's a long while, isn't it? It's a long summer.
Twiddling my thumbs all summer waiting for something to happen.
Fantastic. And you'll be around Sunday. I'll give you a shout Sunday. Yeah. Get your lowdown on it, mate.
That'd be great. Yeah, I'll be there.
Fantastic. Well, Scott, News at Den. Oh, tell me about the News at Den. It's the remaining last journalistic man standing, in a sense, isn't it?
Yeah. I am now officially the only dedicated Millwall reporter. Before, I was kind of, and now I'm definitely the only dedicated Millwall reporter. And yeah, we go to every game, go to every press conference. We speak to so many Millwall people in the past, future, and potentially future, and potentially and the present as well. I spoke to Steve Morrison last week. I've got a few bits.
How did you find that?
Intimidating at first. No, he's a nice guy. He had some great quotes. There was one question he sort of battered down. I think he didn't like it.
I didn't like the cut of your jib.
Yeah, exactly. His reputation sort of preceded him with journalists. But lovely guy. Spoke to Alan Dunn as well. We've got some good insights on latest signing Arrivederci. So yeah, a lot. We really, I have the time. Me and John have this sort of time to really go in depth in the way that sort of BBC or other sort of outlets don't. So we can speak to all these people.
How much is the pay model, the Patreon thing that you do?
News at Den Plus is £3 a month.
£3? How cheap is that, dear listeners? And you get quality journalism.
Yeah, or if you fancy it, it's £20 for the year, I believe. Maybe it's 30, I can't remember actually.
It's a snip. It's good stuff on there, I can guarantee. And there's a good podcast on there between yourself and John.
Yeah, me and John did one last Friday. We're going to try do one sort of every week or every 2 weeks. So even more Millwall content, even more audio content.
Not enough Millwall content. They're turning up the music now, listeners. I want to say thank you, Will. We're going to be talking to you Sunday, mate.
Yeah. Thank you very much for having me on.
Nice one. The club sounds of Ibiza blare out across.
Can't wait to get hit by a copyright strike.
As you walk along Bolina Road, listeners, I came in from that side earlier on, and the effect of the railways, it looks like the world has ended and you're the only man alive left in London as you walk through these deserted streets. But the club were playing some kind of club sound from the stadium, and it sounded like it was rebounding off of the stonework all around you. It was a very strange effect. But the club actually just going to bring the players in. They're going to do these flag waving videos for goal scoring. It's quite a fascinating thing to watch, actually. Music, I think, is to try and get the vibes going, I think. I'm going to wander over and have a look and see what I can see. So it's green screen stuff. That's Massimo Luongo, not Mario Luongo. Massimo Longa behind the green screen there. They're just doing the shots for the videos. I feel a bit like in the Wizard of Oz when you look behind the curtain. Josh Coburn in front of the green screen at the moment, dear listeners, doing his kind of fist pumping type green screen video. I suppose they project something on the back of it. Who knows what they're going to project? And there's Massimo Longa with his Aussie flag in front of a white screen, whilst an assistant arranges the stance and the flag.
Achtung, Millwall.
Superbia precedit ruina, dear listeners. Superbia precedit ruina. Pride comes before the fall. And I thought that was an appropriate way to interject in this coverage of Mill's Media Day to confess to you that I did have 2 player interviews. In fact, they were promised in the course of that little bit of dialogue. 2 player interviews with the very talented Femi Aziz and the wonderful Billy Mitchell. I managed to cock up the recordings on both, dear listeners. So pride comes before the fall, because the only bit of Femi that I did get was the bit where I was joking with him about the key to podcasting is always press record. And that is my tip to any young listeners out there that want to start up in the whole podcast vlogging scene. The biggest tip you can do is always press record. And I didn't do that. I was using a Sony voice recorder yesterday. I should have stuck with my iPhone, listeners. Shoulda, coulda, didn't. And consequently managed to screw up my 2 star interviews. I apologise to them for effectively wasting their time. I apologise to you too, dear listeners. It's schoolboy error on my part. But even at the age of 64, I can still make a schoolboy error, but that's the way it goes. So I just wanted to recap really the gist of what Femi and Billy and even Alex Neil, because we've got a little informal conversation with Alex Neil yesterday at the Lions Centre. The buzz around the squad is real and palpable at the moment. Every player that we managed to grab, even a passing comment is really fired up at the moment. Certainly, that was the vibe that I got from speaking to Femi, about a hugely talented player, in my opinion. This is a big season for Femi Aziz. I think he's well aware of that. He's mid-20s, 24, be 25 next time around. And when you review his playing career, he's come through from the academy and the lower ranks and the non-leagues. He's playing at places like Northwood, Wealdstone and the like. He does know what the other side of the coin looks like, and came to Reading. He's come to us via Reading, and I do think that he sees this season, and I'm paraphrasing here on his behalf a little bit, but I think this goes across the board for a lot of our players. This is a really big opportunity. I'd probably say the same about Billy, to be honest with you. We'll come back to Billy in a moment. But there's a very real excitement at the quality of players that the club have been signing, and the intelligence of the manager, which again is something that every time I've had the privilege of meeting Alex Neil, is something that comes across to you as an intelligent manager in a way that possibly we haven't had so much of for a long time at Millwall. And I think, the likes of Femi Aziz are responding to that. It is a big opportunity, because if we can get it together, it's in room for shout of the Premier League, and these are players that are at a point in their careers where that chance might not arise many more times. Certainly they're still young men, of course, in life terms, but in player development years, to be in your mid-20s, it's a big opportunity, and I think they see it as that. It was interesting speaking to him. He comes across very well. He's a very articulate, very thoughtful young man, very impressive young man, if I might say. Both as a player, of course, but also as a man. And he actually made the point that the feeling in the squad and the camaraderie amongst the squad is very, very strong at the moment. He referred to it as a family. And I wanted to make that point. I was really disappointed when I lost the interviews, but I just wanted to get that across, because I think it's interesting that somebody who's come to us not from traditional Millwall roots, he wasn't born into doesn't have a kind of a traditional linkage to the club, unlike Billy, who does. But Femi has come to us, and he used that word. So it's interesting, and I think that there's I don't want to overdo the optimism, because obviously everyone knows that at Millwall, the first defeat of the season will go over a cliff edge of despair. But at the moment, it's a very real thing, and I do think that the players are tuning into that. It was an interesting afternoon yesterday, and that was very much the the feeling that I picked up, milling around in amongst the media events that the club were laying on. Billy, again, I was interested to speak to Billy. I think he comes across very well, and I know he's Millwall through and through, like all of us, and he comes from a Millwall family, and so on. But I think I think he's got real potential to make it this season. Again, I would say the same thing about Billy Mitchell as I said about Femi Aziz. This is a big opportunity, and I think he sees it as that. I think there is a very real sense for players of their of their year, so to speak, mid-20s, both of them, just before mid-20s. I think in Femi's case, maybe the same in Billy's. I haven't got his date of birth to hand. But it's a big opportunity, and it might be one that doesn't come around very often. So it's there to be grabbed if they can. And I do think there's a sense that this is a real opportunity for players to get to the very top league, and that's going to be something to, that hopefully drives them on across the season. I asked Billy about the weight of playing as a Millwall fan and coming from a Millwall family, and does that put extra pressure on you? It seems to have with other Millwall fans in the past, listeners, doesn't it? We can all think of the likes of John Marquis and Sid Nelson, who can forget that. Millwall fans, but it's almost the task is redoubled. I asked Billy, does the shirt weigh heavy on his shoulders? And he acknowledged that that's a real pressure. He said, and I found this really interesting, he said he responds to it, he likes it, he wants it. To play for your club is a rare privilege. Not every player gets it. Alfie Doughty was walking around yesterday. We weren't able to speak to Alfie, unfortunately, but again, you can just tell by the way the players were acting around him. He's immediately part of this familial sense that is at the club at the moment. And Billy responds to that. He said he likes it, he wants it, and he feels he plays better. One thing that did come out of my conversation with Billy, which I also, optimism upon optimism here, listeners, is the respect in which the manager is held. Billy said to me when we were recording, or actually no, it was after I stopped recording, that he's got great confidence that if he can hit a ball into spaces that it's pre-planned, he knows someone's going to be there. The manager has a very detailed approach to the game, and I think everyone, including Billy Mitchell, is responding to that. I mean, it was as I say, it was a real sense. We did get a little informal conversation with Alex Neil, and I must be honest, I find him a very warm personality. When Alex Neil came to us, which was back was it in February or was it January? Last season. Obviously had a task in front of him because we were slightly looking over our shoulders when he walked through the door. But my image of him at that point was probably a stereotype in a sense. He came across as slightly stern-faced, the Scottish manager, do you know what I mean? A kind of a flinty kind of stereotypical image. That's what I had of him. I didn't know much about him in truth. But every time I've had the opportunity to speak with him, and being on the group call that happened a few episodes ago with the club, he's a really warm personality. I feel really bad for having thought that of him, but I didn't know him. He comes across, he seems to be enjoying his time. He said a few times in different locations, the end of season dinner, the episode we did the interview with a few shows back, how much he feels part of the kind of, should we call it the working class grit of Millwall, and he feels part of that. He comes from the west coast of Scotland, small town Scotland, Glasgow hinterland, and that's very much the same kind of vibration that you get up there. So I think he feels very much at home. One interesting point, I don't think I'm telling tales out of school, he said if we can play like we have been in pre-season, he's very, very confident we can do well. Obviously, we'll all review that 5 o'clock on Saturday afternoon, dear listeners, won't we? And he made the same joke himself. Obviously that can all go out the window quite quickly. But at the moment, he's very, very happy, and I think the players are too, dear listeners. It was a really nice event. I do want to repeat my thanks to Max McLellan for setting this up. Had a few questions as to why the podcasts were invited on various platforms. Why were we there? I think the club are trying to reach out. You got two things going on right now, listeners, haven't you? There's a very real decline in certainly old school local journalism. I was lucky to meet Will Scott yesterday. He's worked with the News at Den, and they are the last formal news agency, newspaper, if that's still a word that you can use. Certainly the last local journalist properly covering Millwall. So, and then you've got the mainstream media, which, is almost a term of abuse in some people's worlds. We had bad experiences, of course, with the Daily Mail last season in the wake of the Palace turnout. And I think the club are trying to do their best. I think this is a football thing. I don't think Millwall are particularly... they're doing their part of it, but the model that they're trying to follow is what Watford have been doing. Apparently, Watford have reached out to their main podcast style shows, whether that's YouTube or Sound, or I don't know what they have there, but the main shows that cover fan shows that cover Watford FC, and the way they've done it is that if you have a following on the X or on YouTube above a certain level, then you can be on a trust basis brought into the fold slightly. So events like the interview with Alex Neil, for example, which traditionally we wouldn't have got anywhere close to. None of the podcasts really were, seen as trusted enough, I suppose, to come in. And this is a word that I want to come back to, this whole trust thing, because there is a certain level of risk from the club's point of view by allowing non-journalists. I am no professional. I am a fan, and so it goes for all the other guys. Nice to see Chris from Chat with Chaps. Nice to see Omar from That Millwall podcast. And it's nice to see Dan from Lions TV. We are not, any of us, professionals. We are all amateurs. And there is an element of risk for the club to bring, outsiders, as some might call us, into the fold. What I would say, my approach is this, because I've seen criticisms from various places. Oh, this is like a control thing. The club can control what you're saying. The club can control, withdraw your privileges, like you're in a prison, like you're in Belmarsh and you've been a naughty boy. They're going to withdraw your privileges. What I would say to that and those critics out there, I do this as a hobby. Basically, I don't do it certainly don't do it for financial gain. I give the money away, as listeners on this show will know and appreciate. I know that Chris, Chat with Chaps, does a similar kind of thing with his show. I believe Mickey does it with TMP. Dan is doing it as a job, I suppose, and it's a different approach. I'm not going to talk about Dan because, I see the criticisms. I took a photo. The devil got in me, dear listeners. The devil got in me. I took a photo of the four of us, and it's launched a tirade of reaction. I'm going to leave it there online, which makes me laugh. Big shout out, incidentally, to Scott on X, who replaced Dan with Keir Starmer. It's very funny. Well done, Scott. It did make me laugh when I saw that. But yeah, I've lost track of where I was going with that now. I've got diverted down Scott's Photoshop efforts. There is an element of trust. Of course, if you're going to slate the club, if you're going to start slagging it off, if you exist to just merely have a pop at the club, then you can probably expect not to be invited. I mean, that would be who would do that? Who would invite in somebody or some show or whatever that's going to just use the opportunity to slag the club off? I don't do that. I've never done it. I don't set out to do anything other than represent what I believe Millwall FC to be, and to put the best possible light on us as a club, us as a support, that I possibly can. Can't always get away with it, because sometimes events, take you down some rocky roads. But that's my purpose, and it's a hobby for me. So, is there an element of control in it? I don't personally accept that, because if I needed to say something, I would say it. And, if that led to my being put on some kind of naughty step, well, that would be it. I can't think what that thing might be. I'm really, really optimistic with the direction that the club is taking at the moment. Now, that doesn't last forever. We've been Millwall fans, all of us on this, listeners to this show have all been around the block enough times to know that optimism lasts for so long, and then you get into the opposite. But I don't know what I would have to say, unless it was, I mentioned the bird shit on my seats many a time, so I don't feel like I'm some kind of puppet being controlled by Max, who arranged yesterday. I mean, I just don't see that personally, but others will say, well, you wouldn't, Nick, would you, because you're going to be biased. So there we are. That's how we all came to be in on what was a very interesting afternoon. I apologise for missing the 2-star interviews. But there we are. Superbia precedit Rowena, as I've said already. I'm going to take a quick break now, dear listeners, and I'm going to come back for the remainder of the show with some of the comments from the YouTube and the Spotify comment section. So stay tuned. Be right back.
This episode is brought to you by Nordstrom. Summer's almost out and fall's calling. Luckily, Nordstrom has everything you need for the season ahead, all under $100. Discover new arrivals from your favorite brands like Mango, Princess Polly, Wave, Free People, BDG, and more. Whether you're planning a last-minute getaway, heading back to class, or refreshing your office looks, you'll find the latest trends and beauty must-haves without breaking your budget. It's easy, too, with free shipping, free returns, and in-store order pickup. Shop today, in stores, and at Nordstrom.com.
This episode is brought to you by Dogfish Head Craft Brewery. The Grateful Dead and Dogfish Head have gotten the band back together with the release of Grateful Dead Juicy Pale Ale, a light-bodied pale ale brewed with sustainable Kernza grains, granola, and heaps of good karma for a refreshing brew that's music to your taste buds. Available nationwide. Visit dogfish.com to find Grateful Dead Juicy Pale Ale in your neck of the woods. Dogfish Head Craft Brewery is located in Milton, Delaware. Please drink responsibly.
This episode is brought to you by Wayfair. Podcasts follow us everywhere. Whether you're cooking in the kitchen, chilling in the living room, or pretending to fold laundry in the bedroom. And with Wayfair, every one of those rooms can tell a story of its own. Their curated collections of furniture styles and prices make Wayfair the trusted destination to turn your home into your happy place. Shop everything home at wayfair.com with free and easy delivery straight to your door.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
Achtung, Millwall.
I want to give a shout out to our friends John Kelly and Will Scott over at News at Den. Many of you will know that News at Den is the go-to site for everything Millwall. It's part of the Southwark News, the only newspaper with a dedicated Millwall reporter who follows the Lions all over the country. What you may not know is that Southwark News is an independent small business with no investors, no big media company, nor multi-millionaire owners. It's a rare breed, a local paper for local people. And John and Will get the Millwall stories that no one else can. A lot of their stuff is free to read, but the in-depth pieces are for subscribers only. It's just £3 a month or £30 a year, and we think it's a proper bargain. By paying, you're supporting local journalism done the right way. You can sign up by visiting southwarknews.co.uk and clicking on the News at Den section. southwarknews.co.uk, click on News at Den Plus. Welcome back, dear listeners. We get a lot of comments and really appreciate it. Do keep the comments coming. YouTube is the most common method. You can reply, I think, on well, not I think, I know you can on Spotify. You can, send a comment. I will respond to them, and sometimes it might take longer than others to respond. But I will, and I make a point of saying, at least a thank you for the comment. If there's anything I can respond with, and I will do. So I want to begin by thanking everybody who's commented on various shows. This one here I've got here is in relation to the Norwich history show I did the other day. 1927, one of the very few wins that we've ever had at Carrow Road. Let's hope that changes on Saturday, dear listeners. Norwich 1927 show. This is from Anthony Tompkins. He says, I never knew that subs were not allowed back then, 1927. No, they weren't, Anthony. Wonder when that came in. Well done, Nick. Well, that came in the mid-60s. I think it was 1965, and I have to check this, so if you know better, listeners, correct me on the comments. I think Eamon Dunphy was our first substitute. The very first was Keith Peacock for Charlton. I think it was about 1965 that the idea of substitutes, took hold in the professional game. Until then, no, it was the 11 that you started with were the 11 that you finished with, whether they were injured or carried off or whatever. Interesting, actually, and I only realised this when I read the 1966 World Cup final book. No subs in that World Cup. No subs in the World Cup final, 1966. They think they're on the pitch. It's all over that one. No substitutes. It was the 11 that started with the 11 that finished. So, yeah, relatively recent, really, isn't it? So, a big thank you there to Anthony. Moving along, this is reactions to the Alex Neil interview, which was a few shows back now. It was when the squad were in Spain on the workout trip out there in Alicante. So this is from Kemisabi. Alex Neil sounds like a tatties and onions guy, because there was a mention of pie mash on the show, wasn't there? Mickey brought up the subject of pie mash, whether Alex Neil has had it. But Kemisabi says that Alex sounds like a tatties and onions guy, Scottish for potatoes, mince and onions. Great work from all you guys. I quite like. I don't know if I should have been born up north or north of the border, but I really do like a Scotch pie. These are, I don't know what's in them, and probably it's best you don't know what's in a Scotch pie. If any listeners do know what goes into a Scotch pie, do let me know. But I had one years ago. Went up to Glasgow with mates on a drinking weekend. We got to see Queen's Park at Hampden Park, and I had a Scotch pie, and because it was freezing cold day, I don't know what was in it, but it certainly warmed my cockles. It was a really nice kind of, I don't even know how to describe it, a meat pie of sorts, but I do like a Scotch pie, so maybe Alex can share the details of that if he's tuned into the show. Kemisabi would have asked, what team did Alex Neil support when he's not working for Millwall? Don't know. Yeah, that was a good question. Maybe we'll save that up for Max McLellan another time. Whether he'll get a straight answer to that or not, I don't know. And where does he think Millwall will end up this season, says Kemi? Well, you're not going to tempt fate in his position, are you? What I can say, as I said before the break, is that he was very, very positive. If we play in an attacking sense, how we have played during pre-season, he was very confident we're going to get goals in this division. So, obviously we'll wait to see how it goes on Saturday. It says, great work from all you guys. Achtung Millwall, Chat with Chaps, Lions TV and That Mill podcast. Big thank you to Kemisabi. Liquor all day, says Alex, because he was talking about gravy on his pie mash, which, I'm with you. Kevin Quirk, liquor all day. Kevin, me too, mate. Vinegar. You can't have too much vinegar on pie mash. Next up, more comments. This is from the Gordon Jago tribute show. Great manager from the 70s, for any listeners who don't know or remember. Gordon Jago passed away recently, having had a long and fulfilling life. He was living in America in his later years, but he was Millwall manager in the mid-70s, particularly around the time of the infamous Panorama show. But he did produce some really good seasons for us. One of my favourites is in the top three favourite ever seasons. 1975-76, promotion from the third division. The first time I'd seen us be successful with Gordon Jago. And we played some really nice football in the second division in 76-77. Alex Mitchie says it was an interesting listen. Thank you, Alex. Much appreciated, Nick and John Rankin. Being born in 1960, I remember Gordon's reign as manager well. It's clear he was ahead of his time. He was, Alex. He was one of the first managers to buy into the modern idea, listeners, that football is an entertainment rather than being a muddy grind as it was very often when you see these nostalgia shows on YouTube or Sky show them from time to time. They show the pitches in the 70s and the conditions. We've all got very used to modern stadia. I include myself here, listeners. I might go on, all nostalgic, rosy tinted about the 70s. But really, I think it was an era coming to an end. It had to come to an end. It would tragically come to an end in places like Heysel and Hillsborough and Bradford in the 80s. And then you got the modern game, which for all of its downside of money sloshing around, we do see it in much better conditions, much safer conditions. And we watch better football played on better pitches, in my opinion. Don't buy the nostalgia for the past is my message to kids out there. So yeah, big thank you to Alex. R.I.P. boss, a true lion, says Mark Randy was. The wonderful season of 75-76. Promoted because Crystal Palace couldn't beat Chesterfield. Wonderful evening spent with a load of Millwall fans at Selhurst Park watching Crystal Palace draw 0-0 with Chesterfield, because that meant we went up. And try and explain that to the kids now. Yeah, there we are. Back in the days, you could just go along and pay on the turnstile. Gary Bartholomew, shout out Gary, says he grew up with Jago and Benny Fenton. Jago had some greatest Lions players. Come on, you Lions. Sean Coleman does make reference to Jago's sense of being ahead of his time. He had this bonkers idea of changing the name of the club to get away from its hooligan image. He wanted to think that change the name of the club and also change the name of Coldblow Lane into something. It wasn't Sunsplash Avenue. It was something like Montego Road or some nonsense of that kind of, rather than Coldblow Lane, which I've always thought was tremendous as a name. He wanted to change it into something sunnier, more upbeat. And Sean Coleman said he wanted to turn us into Lewisham Rangers. That then was a lawless place, the Wild West. He's referring to the famous Ipswich FA Cup quarter-final in 1978 when there was. Who thought of this? They decided as pre-match entertainment before this high-powered FA Cup quarter-final against Ipswich, who were a top side in their day, decided to have a shootout at the OK Corral with real, well, not real guns, but, guns that sounded real, on the pitch. Like they had a stockade of a shootout in a coffin. It's a famous picture of some coppers before it would all go square on and off the pitch in that game. Sean was in the Brighton game, famous overhead kick from Trevor Lee, mentioned many, many times on this show. 23,000 attendance there was. Massive crowd by that day's standards. The final game at Swindon was a carnival, says Sean, before kick-off. The Juligans ran across the pitch from to the home end and kicked some of the footballs off of the Swindon players. Had a kickabout, taking shots. Pre-match entertainment, says Sean. Different times, kids, different times. Round table shows. This was a tribute to Don, dearly beloved Don, much missed Don Bone. I did a revival of the round table back in June with Barry Bongo and Derek King and Peter Hurd. And one of the subjects was your first game at Millwall. And Kevin Quirks replied he's forgotten more than he can remember, but he thinks his first game was Aston Villa in the fifth round of the 1975 League Cup at Villa Park, which I think we got beat at, Kevin, 3-1, I think. And that was the end of our cup run that season. I didn't go to that game. That was a fixture too far for me. I was only 14. I'd been 14 at that point, nearly 15. Couldn't get up there midweek for a League Cup game. But yeah, I remember that fixture. That was Kevin's first fixture as a Millwall. I'm sure there's a bit of a show in this, isn't there? Maybe we can do that at one of the international breaks. Your first Millwall, the first game you came to at Millwall. Great show, says Mark Murphy. I think I might have some programmes from when I first went to the Den. Your description of walking up the stairs is my description into the Coldblow Lane and was absolutely spot on. It was a feeling you just can't forget. I come from a family of West Ham supporters, and I've been to Upton Park. Oh, you're a turncoat there, Mark, aren't you? But I've never experienced the same feeling as seeing the Den, the pitch. Good boy. Good on you, Mark. To date, my time, I remember Barry Kitchener and Tony Hazel were the centre-backs, and Trevor Lee and Walker were working the midfield and the wings. Great players all in that era. I suppose it's whatever heroes you have when you're in your teens. Did I read the other day that your music taste is often set during your early teens? So from, let's say, the age of 12 to 13 to 17 to 18 to 20, that's when you really get set. I can say that's true. I've listened to albums since, and some of them all right, But often I find myself going back and back and back for me to the music of the 70s. That's when I was happening, and I think that goes for football and your heroes then. Michael H says his first game was Orient League Cup game, 1976, 0-0 at the Den. He just turned 12. I don't remember that one, Michael. 0-0 at the... I have to look it up. I will look it up another time. Jonathan Bowdery says, good to hear the band back together again, Nick, and a hand clap emoji. Yeah, it was nice. Nice show. Good to see Barry, Derek and Peter for various reasons. We hadn't seen each other since pre-COVID and a bit before that. Last time we'd done that kind of all sat round a microphone round table show, because these old gits don't do Zoom calls. They want it in the flesh. We were over at Bromley, back when Bromley was still very much a non-league side, So yeah, that was good to see the boys. Joe, this is one about Mark Murphy's going about Jago again, ups and downs. Tony Hazel, he says, was a uni. He went on to work for BT, British Telecom, as an external engineer. It's always interesting, was it? Robbie Ryan finished up working for the London Underground, TfL, on fixers on the railways. Mark really enjoyed Trevor Lee and Phil Walker. Walker's pace was excellent. He had a good touch with the ball and a good shot on him as well. Mark, you can see some of the examples of Phil Walker's work on YouTube, listeners. And Mark thinks that Phil Walker was totally responsible for his love of a pacey midfielder and winger. Jago was definitely a man ahead of his time. Unfortunately, we didn't invest as much as we could have at the time, but there was a lovely car dealership down the Old Kent Road that was probably got created instead. That's cynical, Mark. I think you might be onto something there, mate. When he left, he went across to the Tampa Bay Rowdies, and it felt like a strange decision. Obviously, there were a lot of attempts at making soccer, inverted commas, acceptable across the pond, across the Atlantic and the USA. And Jago was a big part of American football, and he was there in the 70s, all through the 80s. I think I read that in his obituary that he was involved in the NASL, National American Soccer League, which was a big thing in the 70s. That kind of died away a bit. And football, as we would call it, lived on in the USA as an indoor, I don't know if it was 7-a-side or 5-a-side, but the indoor league, and he was part and parcel of that. He was a very, it was a visionary, really. He had visions, don't sound like some kind of David Icke figure there, I had visions. But he saw a future for the game that was probably much more modern, in like I've said, as an entertainment, rather than perhaps a tradition as we've all been brought up with it. So he was always going to be, probably his natural home was in America, where they're much more open to new things in that sense, rather than bound in tradition, as I think sometimes we are here in England. But as Mark says, he was probably one that got away, but as we all know, keeping the Millwall fans on side is a tough job. Even legends felt it's a tough job. RIP Gordon Jago, MBE.
Achtung, Millwall.
What else we got here? This is one from, I think it's the Midsummer Show, Harry and Michael. This is Happy Line, says if Race Bangura Williams, who was there yesterday actually. I think one of the other shows have got Race's interview, so do tune in to Chat with Chaps, that Millwall podcast, and Lions TV. We each will have interviews with players. Don't tune into this show for player interviews though, because I managed to press the wrong button on my Sony voice recorder, listeners, on account of being an old git. I should have stuck with my iPhone, which is what I'm recording this on. Happy Lion says if RBW gets game time, he will piss this league. Strong, fast, intelligent, and only 20. This boy will go all the way. I do agree with you, Happy. I think Race has got a bit like Romain. He's got the ingredients to go all the way. Whether Romain will make it with Crystal Palace or whether he might have to come back on loan to us on a cheap return deal of some sort, it's what I hope. Because I think Millwall is a welcoming place to young talent of that kind, Race and Romain Esse, both in their different ways, huge amounts of flair and natural talent. Romain's gone, Race remains. I do think this is a huge opportunity. I really hope he gets game time this season. I do think he's got the magic touch. 3-5-2 as formation says Happy Line. That's what he wants. Nigley, we have no idea what he can do. He looks the part. He does look the part. He was there yesterday, Camille Nigley. Didn't get a chance to speak to him. Lovelace, another one. We have no idea what he can do. No. we fought tooth and nail to keep Zach Lovelace, didn't we, when he went up north, up to Glasgow Rangers. And the same as Happy says here for the Baker from Brighton. That's Benny Baker, isn't it? And a few have said this, we're going to be underestimated this season. There we are. Let's have a Midsummer shows Harry and Michael. Ivanovic needs another season, says Charles Tolworthy, i.e. another season with us rather than... We are still in the transfer zone, Charles, aren't we? So both Ivanovic and Japhet Tanganga are still potentially, signable between now and I think it's the end of August, 1st of September, I read. That's the... when the transfer window closes. So, we can't settle too much. He says, yes, he's worth 20 million. I think he will be worth 20 million once he gets a good season of goal scoring under his Serbian belt with Millwall Football Club in the Championship. Preferably a successful season as well, which will really put... this must be the incentive for players. I'm going to hope that Japhet's listening to this. I don't know what your movements or what your agents are arranging for your Japhet, but a good season with Millwall and a winning season with Millwall will put you in the Premier League and, give you the platform that you all want. Rightly, all players should want the platform of playing at the very highest level to push on. That's what I want for all of our players, Billy, Femi, Mihailo and Japhet as well. Sean Campbell, another one. He wasn't going back to last games at the Den, or games at the Den. I wasn't at the last game at the Den, which was Bristol Rovers, famous 3-0 loss in the 1993 2-3 season. I was there for that one. That was a miserable afternoon. But one of my mates took home a bit of the advertising hoarding, which remained on his balcony, rotting for a bit, and I rescued the rusting nail and put it in my van for good luck. The van got stolen in Birmingham, says Sean, and I was more gutted about losing that nail, as unlike the van, it can't be replaced. I took some grass. I went on the pitch at the... very unlike me, listeners, I don't do stuff like that. But I went on the pitch in the Bristol Rovers game 1993, because everyone was tearing up the pitch. I thought, I've got to tear up a bit of this pitch. I've got to take away a sod of turf from the Den, which I did. And then when I got home, I thought, well, I didn't have a garden. The place I was living at didn't have a flat, didn't have a garden. What exactly do I do with this piece of Den sod? What do I do with it? I took it into work and I think I threw it away in the end because I didn't know what else. It started getting all, it grew. And I thought, what do you do? Do you trim it? How do you feed it? Do you keep grass as a plant? I threw it away. Great show, Guy, says the Daily Mill. I think Harry must have said that Ivanovic was at the summer under-21 tournament for Serbia, which was held in Slovakia. Daily Mill says the 2027 tournament, which Serbia are jointly hosting with Albania, is the under-21 tournament. Despite the fact he will be over 21 in 2027, the cut-off is needing to be under 21 when the qualifying starts. So he may qualify for that for Serbia. There we are. I've got a few from Spotify. Those are all from YouTube. Do keep the comments coming, dear listeners. Really appreciate it. And do like and subscribe. I always feel a bit odd saying that to the YouTube. All of our audio podcasts, and they will remain as audio podcasts primarily. I might do the odd little bit of video stuff here and there, but they're going to be an audio podcast primarily. But they get carried over to YouTube, which is often how a lot of people listen to it on YouTube. I think it gets past work firewalls for some reason. I believe, I don't know. So a few comments from Spotify for various shows. The Alex Neil conversation. This is from House. Hi Nick, great interview with Alex Neil. He comes across really well and talks a lot of sense in my eyes, straight to the point, unlike some of the managers we've had recently. I met you on the recent Jimmy walk. Oh, hello, yeah, House, that's right, yeah. That was a long day, blimey, 27-mile walk, but for a great cause. By the end of it, though, I couldn't think. I do remember your House. Yeah, nice to meet you, mate. I hope you've recovered well. Just about. My last toenail bruise is just recovering now. Great day. Ian Tobin says, love your work as always. Thank you, Ian. That's very kind. Enjoy hearing your stories on the 70s and 80s, which were before my time. Your tribute to Jago was fantastic. And ironically, only a couple of weeks ago, I listened to your interview with Trevor Lee on Wall Talk, which is also fascinating. He's a real character, Trevor, well worth digging out. Wall Talk. Not sure what's happening with Wall Talk next season. Remains to be seen. I am available for Wall Talk if they want me. If they don't want me, then I am not precious, dear listeners. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. Well, years ago, I did back in COVID, I did an interview with both Phil Walker, who's now sadly passed away, and Trevor Lee. So that's worth searching for on if you go to Apple and search Achtung Millwall Trevor Lee, it pops up. It's got a good search engine on it. So quite a few good interviews on there during that long COVID time. Ian's first game was May 1992. We beat Southend at home 2-0. Chris Armstrong, there's a name, scored twice. We then sold to the Surrey club, Crystal Palace, for £1 million. Yeah, big money then. Selling players was a recurring theme I had to get used to. Casey Keller made his debut. Chris Armstrong, what a player. I mean, I can't say I was heartbroken because I've got used to selling, a bit like as Ian said, you have to get used to it at Millwall selling players. But he looked a really strong forward. He was a strong, went on to play for Palace and then Tottenham, didn't he? Alexander Young, no fairy tale endings for the Turf Moor, last game of last season. They loved the show and the passion and knowledge you have for the club. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Alexander. And great result and performance from the Lions. Oh, this is Sheffield United. We're going back a while there from Alexander Young again, onwards and upwards. Thank you, Alex. There it is, dear listeners. I hope you've enjoyed the show. It's got a bit of a, tapas quality, little bits and pieces with the main dish missing, which were my interviews with Billy and Femi. I shan't live that down in a long time. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you once again to the club for arranging the media day. Really interesting, behind the scenes, behind the curtain kind of afternoon. I shall be at Norwich on Saturday. I hope you will send me your voice note messages, listeners. Do let me have your thoughts, views and opinions. We're going to be speaking to Will Scott of the News at Den on Sunday to get his take on proceedings. But do let me have your voice notes. If you haven't got my mobile number, give me a shout on X, direct message me, and we can exchange mobile numbers. And a post-match voice note, a couple of minutes long, doesn't have to be, hopefully keep it reasonably coherent. I don't mind a bit of swearing, but as long as it's intelligent swearing, I think that's my only request, listeners. But do let me have your thoughts, views and opinions after Norwich. And the circus begins on Saturday. Let's keep our fingers crossed. And I'll be back after the weekend with our reviews of Millwall, a trip to Norwich. Can we undo the hoodoo, 50-year hoodoo? Last time we won there, 1968. Fingers crossed, dear listeners. Thank you for listening to this show. It's Arrivederci Millwall from me, Nick Hart. Until the next edition at the weekend, it's bye for now. You can hear Achtung Millwall via all of the major podcast platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts and Amazon Music. You can even tune into us via YouTube. Ooh, Arkatin.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.